On Wednesday, members of City Council will hear about a proposal that supporters say could provide some property tax relief to some homeowners in Cook County. It's called a circuit breaker, and the idea is that property taxes cannot exceed a set percentage of the taxpayer's income. That kind of plan already in place in 29 states with varying eligibility requirements, some pertaining to age or disability. But the main goal is reducing the financial burden on low and middle income residents. Now, here in Cook County, many homeowners in the south and southwest suburbs saw their property taxes skyrocket by more than 30% over the summer. The search for tax relief continues as the county assessor battles with the Board of Review over who is responsible for picking up the tab. George Cardenas is a commissioner on the Cook County Board of Review. He represents the 1st District, covering Chicago's southwest side, parts of the northwest side, as well as western and northwest suburbs. Commissioner Cardenas will present his findings on circuit breakers to City Council this week. You're kind of going home when you do that.
I'm going back home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so welcoming home. I hope it's a good party for me. Yes, reception.
Well, let's understand. Let's get a sense of what you're going to tell the City Council. Look, everybody says their property taxes are too high. You hear that all the time, and you want to see the tax rate or total amount paid by a homeowner tied to their income or ability to pay. This concept involving a circuit breaker. Just define for my viewers, what exactly does a circuit breaker do?
Well, just what it does. If you, obviously at home, you have electricity and you have circuits, breakers that allow you to manage the electricity and the currents in your home. And sometimes an overload happens and you have to reset it. That's just what that is. It's an overload on property taxes for individuals and homeowners that are obviously feeling the pain. And a lot of them really can't really pay that burden anymore.
Well, I want to clarify who it is that this impacts. I mean, that is to say, you say our current property tax system often requires owners to pay a larger share of their income than affluent families, low-income people. But if a rich person buys a home and a less affluent person buys that home, but both can afford it at the time they buy it, or they wouldn't have been approved for their mortgage, that's my assumption. Isn't the risk they take a known one? That's my question.
No, I think it's based on income. I think it's based on folks that have lived in their homes for a long time. It is now also renters that are part of the ecosystem. So we got to take stock of the entire system and the way it's working. Why is it that some neighborhoods or municipalities or areas are beset by these problems where others are not? It is more and more so the ability to pay or not pay that burden. Tax rates are really not tied to that ability. It is a measure of income. It is a measure of folks that are probably making less than $75,000 a year. That's what our program, or at least our policy proposal, is going to aim at helping.
So it's not for everybody, no matter what level of income you are targeting.
It's not for everybody. It's for those folks that are at risk of potentially losing their homes.
I want to give you a chance.
For various reasons.
Let me give you a chance to maybe defend yourself a bit. Assessor Fritz Kage's been on the show several times, gave a speech this past week. He's told that the reason homeowners are upset with higher tax bills, he understands it, but he goes, the problem is you all. It's blame the Board of Review because of the number of appeals being approved for commercial properties. His argument is if the commercial properties don't pick up part of the bill, well, then the residential homeowners have to. How does all that get juggled?
It's a complex system, but it's disingenuous just to say that. Let me give you an example. So the Tribune ran a story just a couple of weeks ago about omitted property. This property that's not on the tax rolls. They should have been on the tax rolls. It's $500 million, approximately. And whose fault is that? It's certainly not the Board of Review. That's not our jurisdiction. That's not our responsibility. But those properties should be on the tax rolls and could have helped some communities with the tax burden. There's many holes. There's land valuations that are screwed up because our system's not picking it up for some reason. So there's a lot of holes in the system. We need to fix a lot of those things before you start blaming someone else.
Well, take the blame out of it, but I think what he's been trying to do is essentially say, look, the commercial properties, wealthier properties, probably the theory, can take this on more than a lot of residential. You may have known that in his presentation this week, Kage said he too supports a circuit breaker program.
A lot of people are not investing in Cook County anymore. A lot in Chicago, they're not investing anymore. Why? Because it's become unsustainable with new policies. So we can keep blaming that they can pay. Yeah, they could pay probably maybe at the time they bought, maybe at the time a couple of years later. But what if there's an economic crisis, or what if what is going on in the downtown area, where some of these properties, their value has dropped 20, 30% or more, and of course, if that value drops, the assessment value also drops. Who's going to pick up that tab?
Well, so I'm trying to go underneath the surface a little bit. I appreciate what you're saying, but you wrote an op-ed that appeared this week.
Correct.
And so, in reviewing that, you've said, look, the recent reassessment in suburbs like Calumet, Thornton, Rich Townships, which have high minority populations, they had an increase of at least 50%, where affluent areas like Oak Park only saw 33%. Not that that's a small amount, but you point out the differential.
Proportionally, again, it's
Proportionally.
Yeah.
So it seems unfair, but I'm wondering, does it mean that the South suburban homes were undervalued in the past?
Potentially, but also, I think also what hurt the Southland area is the advent of COVID, when the assessor did a unilateral 10% decrease when it really wasn't needed.
So we're still
to be
recovering
honest.
from that.
So we're recovering from that. I mean, some folks ended up paying zero tax, and so when you kind of revalue and you increase, it's a 100% increase. So people are going to see it as a shock because they were not expecting to pay that. So we're resetting to some extent. Part of it is the municipalities and the tax rates in those municipalities, and some of it is the fact that folks we're not ready for those type of increases. So we need to reset the system so that those folks are also protected. Because if not, you could lose our homes and you could lose those communities, and nobody wants that.
And you don't want that. So assuming that a circuit breaker program is enacted, and let's just say a hypothetical family has their taxes limited or cut or reduced, whatever the case may be, based on their income. But the amount of money needed for the government to operate remains the same. The question is, does that mean, okay, city council or city budget, county budget, let's lower the numbers you're looking for? Or does it say, no, somebody else is going to have to pay for it, in which case is the answer the properties that aren't currently taxed?
I think, well, that's part of it. I think we need to educate all of the stakeholders on what's happening, because, they're hearing from their constituents. I know Chairman Sixto Lopez hears it from his constituents in Pilsen, because they're beset. Last year was 60% increases. This year it's 20-25% increases, and some of them are unsustainable. So they need some answers. They need to support some type of legislation that I think evens it a little more for the middle class. That's who we try to aim and help here, because we need them to believe in the system, to not say, you know what, I'm done with this. I can't really pay for this anymore. I'm going to move out. I'm going to take my family with me. We need more people to pay into the system, not less. And I think it goes back to omitted properties, fixing a lot of the holes that we have, but more importantly, help those that can't pay.
Let's talk about who this program is available for. Just to clarify, you said you're looking at a level of $75,000 of income or so.
Threshold, correct.
Okay. But what about, for example, seniors? I mean, are there certain other levels where that's not the factor, or that is the strict
seniors are
factor?
covered by the senior exemption, by the senior freeze. So they could, in fact, be covered already. This will allow us to examine that and make sure that we're covering them, and in case we are missing some, that their ability to be in the system could work.
You said the goal of the program is to protect families from financial hardship and promote housing stability. I get that, but can you can you make the connection between the program and that goal?
Well, I mean, the program itself it's somewhat standard to some extent. Other states are doing that. Illinois is such a progressive state that you wonder, well, how come we're not doing this ourselves? You got to address the regressive nature of property taxes and how it impacts some communities. This is what this legislation would try to accomplish.
So let's get a little headline here. You're making a presentation to City Council this week. They're waiting for you. But it's just step one. No vote's going to be taken.
There are many steps.
So
this is just a subject matter here.
So are they going to hear what you've been telling me? Is there something something else you can share with my viewers that?
I mean, we hope to give them some more data points. We're working with the Institute for Tax and Economic Policy out of Washington, D.C. We hope to work with the Civic Federation, for example. The Treasurer's Office is interested in helping. There are many folks interested in accomplishing a goal that helps those folks. Hopefully, the Treasurer gives us a report in terms of how many people have paid the last payment tax bill that they got, and we'll look at that to see how how our system is doing for those folks, and we'll see how deep the pain is.
Okay. Quick yes or no. Do you expect Kagi to be on board with this? I say that because he talked about a circuit breaker program this past week.
I hope. I mean, I know the assessor wants to solve the problems and has solutions, and I think he'll jump on this. There's no doubt about it.
Okay. George Cardenas, Commissioner for the Board of Review. Thank you for being with me.
Thank you.
I appreciate
We're the
that.
good
City
guys.
Council will be happy to see you. I'll let you all fight that out. Still to come on WGN Political Report, Congress gets back to work this week, but pressure is mounting to get a spending deal done before the government shuts down. In 3 weeks, we're back in a moment.